Earth had never been so close to the precipice. The skies above were a twisted, burning canvas as the fleets of the Trian Empire, massive ships of silver and black, loomed overhead, casting shadows over the dying cities below. Their warships swarmed in like vultures, devouring Earth's defenses one by one, leaving humanity with little hope. The planet's defenses had been shattered, and Earth's military was nearly obliterated. The Trian were ruthless, calculating, and merciless. They saw humans as nothing more than an irritant, a fleeting species to be exterminated to ensure the continued reign of the ancient galactic empires. But what the Trian didn't understand was that humanity had one final weapon: the Phoenix. Hidden deep beneath the surface of what remained of Earth's capital city, a project that had been shrouded in secrecy for decades was finally brought to life. The Phoenix, a ship so powerful that it defied the laws of physics, its design rooted in human ingenuity and daring ambition, was humanity's last hope. A ship capable of shifting the balance of power in the galaxy, the Phoenix was an engine of destruction and inspiration in one. And its crew. They weren't just soldiers. They were humanity's future, genetically and technologically enhanced to unleash power beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. As the last surviving members of Earth's leadership gathered in the underground command center, the atmosphere was one of grim determination. The war had gone on for far too long, and the sacrifices were immeasurable. Earth's population had been whittled down, cities had burned, and entire nations had fallen to alien forces. But the creation of the Phoenix had provided a flicker of hope, a spark that could reignite the fire of resistance. "Activate the Phoenix," Commander Marcus Cole, leader of the Phoenix Initiative, ordered. His voice was steady, but beneath it was a sense of urgency, as if he knew the weight of the moment. The massive underground facility rumbled to life as the Phoenix's core powered up, sending a pulse of energy that resonated through the planet's atmosphere. Lights flickered across the war-torn planet's surface, a symbol of humanity's defiance. The ship, made of a rare, unknown alloy that shimmered with energy, rose slowly from its docking bay, a behemoth that seemed almost alive. Within its hull were the soldiers that would change the tide of history. The Phoenix crew had been selected not only for their combat skills, but for their willingness to embrace the unknown. The genetic enhancements they had undergone were experimental, and while they were designed to push the limits of human strength, agility, and intelligence, they also carried great risks. None of them knew the true extent of their transformation. The only certainty was that they were humanity's last chance. Captain Nadia Hayes, a seasoned soldier and the Phoenix's commander, stood at the heart of the ship's bridge. Her gaze was unyielding, her mind sharp. The weight of her role wasn't lost on her. She had led missions on the ground and in space before, but this was different. She was no longer just fighting for Earth's survival. She was fighting for humanity's legacy. "We are the Phoenix," she declared as the ship's engines hummed to life, her voice resonating through the bridge. "We rise from the ashes, and we burn brighter than any star." As the Phoenix ascended, breaking free from the stratosphere and into the vastness of space, Earth's people watched from below. The remaining pockets of humanity on the surface looked up, feeling the surge of pride, hope, and fear. The Phoenix represented everything they had left: their defiance, their strength, and their refusal to surrender. But the Trian Empire wasn't going to let humanity rise without a fight. The Phoenix was already marked for destruction, and its enemies were closing in. The battle for the galaxy was about to begin, and humanity's journey was just starting. In the depths of space, the Phoenix glided toward its first test. Its maiden mission would set the tone for everything to come. And with it, humanity's future would either be sealed in fire or rewritten in the stars. The Phoenix tore through the vacuum of space, its sleek silhouette cutting through the starry expanse like a comet of vengeance. On board, Captain Nadia Hayes stood at the helm, eyes fixed on the massive holographic display that stretched across the ship's bridge. The vastness of space had never felt so suffocating. Every inch of it now seemed a potential battleground, with the Trian Empire's forces closing in. "Approaching the Trian outpost," said Lieutenant Isaac Vega, his voice tight with tension. He was one of the Phoenix's elite soldiers, enhanced beyond recognition, yet his focus remained razor-sharp as he monitored the ship's navigation. "We've got 5 Trian warships in orbit. They'll see us coming from light years away." "They'll have to catch us first," Hayes replied, a trace of defiance in her voice. She turned toward the command console, where her tactical officer, Lieutenant Aerosolis, was already inputting the attack strategy. "Initiate evasive maneuvers, maximum speed. Target the weakest link in their defenses. We're not here to play by their rules." The Phoenix had been designed for this moment. Its enhancements were not just physical. The ship itself was a living extension of humanity's will to survive. Powered by the energy derived from the enhanced soldiers within it, the Phoenix was more than just a vessel. It was a weapon of unprecedented power, and in its core, the soldiers' emotional energy was being channeled into the ship's weapon systems. Each thought, each burst of adrenaline, fueled the Phoenix's arsenal, and its crew was fully aware of their role in this symbiotic relationship. As the Phoenix entered range of the Trian outpost, the first wave of enemy fire came in fast. Trian lasers streaked across the void, sharp and unforgiving, but the Phoenix moved with an agility that defied its massive size. Its enhanced engines propelled it forward, dodging and weaving through incoming fire with a grace that left the Trian commander stunned. "Target acquired," Solus called out, locking onto their command ship, weapons at full power. Hayes didn't hesitate. "Fire." A blinding beam of concentrated energy shot from the Phoenix's main cannon, tearing through the blackness of space like a thunderbolt. The Trian command ship, a colossal war vessel adorned with spikes and jagged edges, erupted in a flash of bright orange light. Its shields flickered and failed under the intense energy, and within seconds, the ship's core exploded in a dazzling display of destruction. The Phoenix's first strike was nothing short of catastrophic, leaving the remaining Trian fleet in a state of panic. "We've got their attention," Vega said with a smirk, his fingers flying over the console. "Incoming fighters, a whole swarm of them." Hayes's eyes narrowed. The Phoenix's power was undeniable, but they were far from safe. The Trian Empire would not let this humiliation go unanswered, and as the Trian fighters swarmed around them like angry hornets, it was clear that this was only the beginning. The enhanced soldiers on the Phoenix, already at peak physical capability, felt a surge of energy course through them. It was a high unlike any other, a primal rush that only their genetic modifications could provide. As the first wave of Trian fighters closed in, the crew activated their individual combat suits, nanotech armor enveloping them in seconds, ready for battle. "Prepare for boarding action," Hayes ordered, her voice calm but commanding. "We're taking the fight to them." Moments later, the Phoenix's hangar doors slid open, and a team of enhanced soldiers, including Hayes herself, stormed into the zero-gravity battlefield. The Trian fighters scattered as the Phoenix's soldiers engaged with them in a flurry of acrobatic combat. Bullets, plasma, and knives flashed in the air as the Phoenix crew moved with unnatural speed, cutting down Trian fighters with a precision that bordered on the supernatural. Hayes found herself face to face with a Trian warrior, its grotesque form towering over her. It was a hulking figure, armored in a black exosuit that seemed as if it had been forged from the heart of a dying star. The creature raised a massive energy blade, intending to cleave her in two. But Hayes, her enhanced reflexes kicking in, dodged the attack with a fluid motion. She spun, bringing her plasma blade up to meet its neck. The Trian warrior's head fell to the floor in a cascade of sparks and blood, its body slumping forward in an unceremonious heap. Another Trian soldier rushed toward her from the side, but Hayes was already gone, her agility and strength allowing her to evade the attack with a grace that left the enemy stunned. She moved faster than they could anticipate, each strike more devastating than the last. On the ship's bridge, the battle raged on as well. Solus and Vega worked together, expertly targeting and dismantling the remaining Trian warships. The Phoenix was a force of nature, a living extension of humanity's willpower, and its soldiers, empowered and unrelenting, proved that Earth's greatest weapon wasn't just the ship, it was the human spirit. But as the last of the Trian warships crumbled, a new enemy appeared on the horizon, a shadowy figure, an ancient force within the Trian Empire, watching from afar. It was clear now, this was only the beginning. The battle for the galaxy had started, and humanity had just ignited the fuse. Ready for the next move, Hayes said, breathing heavily but with determination. We've sent a message. Now, let's see who else is watching. The Phoenix's victory over the Trian outpost was a shockwave that rippled through the galaxy. News of the destruction spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of the galaxy, both to those who supported humanity's rise and to those who feared it. The once dismissed humans had delivered a decisive blow, and the political landscape was shifting in ways no one had anticipated. Some alien races, disillusioned by their own endless wars, looked to humanity as a symbol of hope. Others, the powerful and ancient empires, saw them as a threat that must be crushed. Captain Nadia Hayes stood in the command center of the Phoenix, staring out into the cold expanse of space. The victory had been exhilarating, but the aftermath was anything but simple. There were still hundreds of thousands of Trian soldiers scattered across the galaxy, and they would not forgive the destruction of their prized fleet so easily. "We've made waves," Lieutenant Arasolis said, her voice laced with concern. "And not everyone's going to be happy about it." "Tell me something I don't know," Hayes replied, her tone terse. She had no time for hesitation. The Phoenix was now a beacon in the galaxy, both a symbol of defiance and a target for every power that felt threatened by Earth's rise. The enhanced soldiers aboard the Phoenix were already showing signs of their newfound strength. As the ship's crew continued their rigorous training, they were becoming something more than human, more than mere soldiers. Their powers, ranging from telekinetic bursts to heightened reflexes, were growing. But along with their abilities came a dark undercurrent. The longer they used these enhancements, the more they felt the strain on their minds and bodies. They were becoming something else entirely. "Captain, we've just received a communication from the Heiress," Vega announced from his station. His eyes narrowed as he read the transmission. "They're offering an alliance." The Heiress were an ancient race, said to have disappeared long ago, but rumors of their existence had persisted for centuries. They were said to be a peaceful people, renowned for their wisdom and power, but their presence had always been shrouded in mystery. Now, with the rise of humanity, they were stepping out of the shadows. "They're offering us an alliance," Hayes repeated, her brow furrowed. "What's the catch?" "Unknown," Vega replied. "But they want to meet in neutral space. They say they can help us prepare for what's coming." The Trian weren't the only ones watching humanity's rise. The galaxy's oldest and most powerful factions were taking notice. The Phoenix's attack on the Trian had set off a chain reaction, awakening dormant alliances and rivalries. The Arxians, a race known for their cold logic and unyielding warships, were already mobilizing forces, intrigued by the human weaponry they had witnessed. The Vor, a technologically superior insectoid species, began building their own fleet, wary of the Phoenix's potential. And the Shaurians, a nomadic warrior race, saw in humanity an opportunity to form a mercenary alliance, hoping to exploit their advanced abilities for profit. Hayes knew they couldn't fight everyone. Not yet. The Phoenix, while powerful, was still outnumbered, and their enemies were many. But the offer from the Heiress was too tempting to ignore. If they could gain the favor of such an ancient, powerful race, humanity could potentially unite several neutral factions and tip the balance in their favor. "We'll go," Hayes decided. "Prepare for the meeting, but make no mistake, we're not trusting anyone. The Heiress have their own agenda, and we'll be watching them closely." The Phoenix set course for the coordinates provided by the Heiress, a remote planet surrounded by nebulae. As they approached, The ship's sensors detected the eerie calm of the region, a stark contrast to the chaos of the galactic battlefield. The Eris had left no visible sign of their presence, but there was no mistaking the energy that pulsed through the planet's atmosphere. It was as if the very air itself was alive, brimming with ancient power. "We've arrived," Solus said, looking at the redouts. "No other ships detected in the area." "Keep the weapons primed," Hayes ordered, "and keep the crew alert. This could be a trap." The Phoenix descended into the atmosphere, the ship's sleek frame cutting through the clouds like a blade. They were about to meet a race that had watched the galaxy for centuries in silence, and the future of humanity hung in the balance. The Ares could either be allies or enemies who knew just how to manipulate the fragile threads of power. As the Phoenix landed on the surface, the doors opened to reveal an alien landscape. Towering, crystalline structures shimmered in the soft light of the distant stars. The Ares stood waiting, their forms cloaked in flowing robes of shimmering energy, their faces hidden by veils. They did not approach the ship, but their presence was undeniable. They were waiting for humanity to make its move. Hayes stepped forward, flanked by her team of elite soldiers. The tension was palpable, the weight of this moment pressing down on her. The Ares had seen something in humanity, something they had not seen in other races for eons. But whether it was genuine hope or a calculated move to gain leverage, only time would tell. "This is it," Hayes muttered under her breath. "Let's see if humanity truly has what it takes to lead." The Phoenix's landing on the Ares homeworld had been nothing short of surreal. The planet was unlike anything the crew had ever seen, its surface blanketed in translucent forests, where trees seemed to pulse with the rhythm of an ancient song. The air was thick with the scent of something alive, something ancient, and the very atmosphere hummed with a quiet power. The Ares were a race that had mastered the art of subtlety, their presence both calm and unsettling, as though they existed just beyond the edge of human perception. As Captain Nadia Hayes and her team approached the gathering of Ares, the veils that obscured their faces shimmered, revealing glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through to the very core of humanity's deepest fears and desires. The silence between the two species felt heavy, like a thread waiting to snap. The lead Ares, whose robes seemed woven from strands of pure energy, stepped forward. Its voice was melodic but firm, as if it carried the weight of millennia of wisdom. "We have watched your kind for centuries, humans. You are both the spark and the flame that could set this galaxy ablaze. Yet, the path you choose to walk will determine whether you are the dawn of a new age, or the beginning of its undoing." Hayes met the alien's gaze without flinching. The weight of their words was clear. Humanity's rise was a double-edged sword, and the Ares were offering to shape its path. At a price. "We don't need your wisdom to know we're at war," Hayes replied, her voice cold. "We need your help to win it." The Ares leader tilted its head, a strange shimmer passing over its features. "Help, yes, but not in the manner you may think. You believe yourselves to be at the precipice of greatness, but the forces you face are greater than you can imagine. The Trian Empire is but a single blade in the arsenal of an even darker threat, the Concordance. They move in the shadows, their reach far and wide, pulling strings to keep the galaxy in a delicate balance of chaos. The Trian are merely pawns in their game." The word Concordance sent a ripple of unease through the Phoenix crew. Nobody had heard of such a faction. They were supposed to be fighting the Trian, but now they were told there were more sinister forces lurking behind them. "And what do you want in return for your help?" Hayes demanded. She was no stranger to deals made with sharp edges, and she wasn't about to trust the Ares without understanding the cost. The Ares leader's eyes glowed brighter, its form flickering like a dying star. "We will aid you, yes, but there is more at stake than just military might. To defeat the Trian and the Concordance, you must unlock the power hidden within your own people. The enhancements that now course through your soldiers, those are not accidents. They are remnants of your true potential, the legacy of humanity's ancient ancestors who once ruled this galaxy. You must learn to harness them, and we will teach you how. The offer hung in the air, tantalizing yet terrifying. Humanity's greatest strength, the Phoenix and its enhanced soldiers, was rooted in these genetic modifications. But could they truly tap into a power that had been lost for eons? And if so, at what cost? We will require time. The Ares leader continued, time to help you understand your true nature. But there is no time to waste. The Concordance moves, and its agents are already aware of your presence. Your enemies are not content to let you live, let alone thrive. Just as the weight of the Ares words settled into the crew's minds, a sudden pulse of energy cut through the calm. A shadow, a ship cloaked in dark energy, appeared in the sky, a harbinger of the danger that was now closing in. The Ares did not flinch at the sudden intrusion. They had seen it coming. It is too late. The Ares leader intoned softly. They are here. The Phoenix's crew scrambled to action as the ship began to power up. Hayes turned to Solus. Get the ship ready to launch. Full power to shields. Vega, scan for any signs of enemy activity. A hum vibrated through the ground, and the air seemed to warp with the intensity of an approaching force. Then the first strike hit. The skies above the Ares world rippled with the force of an energy blast, sending shockwaves through the terrain. The Phoenix trembled in the distance as its sensors screamed warnings. They found us, Solus said, her voice steady despite the panic that had begun to settle over the team. The Ares, unfazed, merely watched as the ship's dark silhouette grew larger. From within, a voice boomed over the comms, a voice that had never been heard by humanity before, cold and commanding. You have overstepped, humans. The Concordance has waited long enough. Your rebellion ends here. Prepare for battle, Hayes said, her gaze unwavering. The Phoenix was more than a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's potential, and they were not going to lose it without a fight. As the shadowed enemy ship descended, Hayes felt the rush of adrenaline, the weight of responsibility, and the fury of humanity's survival instincts. She turned to the Ares leader one final time. You promised us time. Don't make that a lie. And with that, the battle for humanity's future, for the galaxy itself, began. The Phoenix's engines roared to life, and the crew knew that no matter the cost, they would rise again, just as their ship had. The enemy ship, a sleek obsidian vessel shaped like a wedge of darkness, descended through the atmosphere with chilling precision. It radiated an aura of malevolent power, a ship born of ancient technology far beyond anything humanity had encountered. The Phoenix's crew could feel the weight of its presence, a force that seemed to distort the very fabric of space around it. Captain Nadia Hayes stood tall, her pulse quickening as the ship's dark silhouette loomed ever closer. The air crackled with the tension of what was to come. The Concordance had made their first move, and they weren't wasting any time. They're locking onto us, Lieutenant Vega said from his post, his fingers moving over the ship's controls with fluid precision. Weapons primed, shields holding steady, but we're going to need every bit of power to hold them off. Hayes didn't need to be told twice. Do it. Let's see what they've got. On the command deck, Solus worked furiously at her console, fingers flying over the holographic display. They're deploying smaller ships. Drones, perhaps, swarming us. Drones? Vega raised an eyebrow. They're going for sheer numbers. Let them, Hayes replied grimly. We'll burn them out. As the Concordance's drones streamed toward the Phoenix, the ship's weapon systems came to life. Bolts of energy streaked through the air, decimating the first wave of drones before they could even get close enough to launch their attack. The Phoenix's massive guns fired with deadly accuracy, each shot a testament to the ship's precision and power. But for every drone destroyed, another dozen seemed to materialize in its place, swarming around the Phoenix like a cloud of locusts. This is getting out of hand, Solus muttered, watching the incoming targets on her screen. We need to break through their perimeter. Now. Hayes nodded. All hands, brace for impact. Focus fire on their lid ships. We're not here to play." The Phoenix surged forward, its engines flaring as the ship weaved through the onslaught of drones. The enhanced soldiers aboard the ship readied themselves, securing their combat suits and preparing for what came next. Hayes' thoughts were on the enemy vessel above, and on the ancient warning the Heiress had given them. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a war for the very future of the galaxy. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet trembled as the enemy ship fired again. This time, the blast was massive, a shockwave of energy that struck the Phoenix with such force it sent the crew stumbling. The ship's shields flared bright as they absorbed the brunt of the attack, but the impact was enough to rattle every soul on board. The hull groaned and the lights flickered, but the Phoenix held steady. For now. "Status report," Hayes barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Shields at 60% and holding." Solus replied, her voice tight. "But those drones aren't stopping. We need more firepower." "We've got one shot," Hayes said, clenching her fists. "Engage the auxiliary systems. Push the Phoenix to the limit." With a deep rumble, the Phoenix's internal systems whirred as they activated hidden reserves of power. The ship surged forward with newfound speed, crashing through the wall of drones in a flash of brilliant light. Each shot fired was a symphony of destruction, cutting through the dark masses of Concordance ships with precision. But as they carved through the enemy's front lines, the true size of the Concordance force became clear. The shadow ship above them released its full might, a barrage of energy blasts too powerful to be avoided. A deep tremor ran through the Phoenix, and the hull shuddered violently as another strike landed. "Shields are failing," Vega shouted. "We're taking critical damage. Pull us out of range." Hayes commanded, her jaw set in determination. "We need to regroup. Full speed ahead. Now." The Phoenix pulled away, narrowly dodging another wave of fire. The space around them was filled with debris and burning fragments of the enemy drones. They had won the skirmish, but the battle was far from over. The enemy ship loomed in the distance, like a storm ready to strike again. As the Phoenix limped into a safe distance, Hayes took a deep breath, her thoughts racing. The Concordance wasn't just any enemy. It was an organization so vast and insidious, they had pulled the strings of galactic politics from the shadows for millennia. And now they had turned their attention to humanity. "The Concordance isn't just after the Phoenix," Hayes said, her voice cold and resolute. "They're after us. They've known about our potential for far longer than we've realized. We've made a lot of enemies in a short time," Solus said, her voice tinged with concern. "No," Hayes said, shaking her head. "We haven't made enemies. We've made targets, and if they want a war, we'll give them one." Vega turned to the captain, his gaze steely. "What's the next move, Captain?" "The Heiress are right about one thing," Hayes replied. "We have to unlock our true potential if we're going to survive what's coming. And I intend to do that." Hayes looked out at the vastness of space, at the ship that had become humanity's last hope. The fight had only just begun, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The Phoenix wasn't just a weapon. It was a symbol, a living testament to humanity's resilience, and no matter how dark the storm grew, they would rise. They would burn, and they would never be extinguished. "We fight," Hayes whispered, "until the very end." The Phoenix limped through the stars, its hull battered but far from broken. Captain Nadia Hayes stood on the command deck, her mind racing with the weight of the battle they had just fought. The Concordance, a shadowy force older than the galaxy itself, had launched their first strike, and though humanity had held its own, it was clear they were facing an adversary unlike any they had encountered before. "Status report," Hayes demanded, her voice steady despite the turmoil churning within her. "We're holding steady, Captain," Lieutenant Vega replied. His eyes flicked between his console and the view screen, watching the flickering starlight as the Phoenix sailed through the dark expanse. "Shields are down to 45%, But we've rerouted power to the engines. Hull integrity is at 70%. We're a little worse for wear, but we're alive. Solus stepped forward, her face set in determination. But barely. The Concordance knows our capabilities now. They'll hit us harder next time. We need to be ready. Hayes nodded, a grim understanding settling in. She had known this would be the price of humanity's rise, but what had been unexpected was the urgency of the situation. The Concordance wasn't just targeting the Phoenix. They were hunting humanity. This was no longer just a battle for the galaxy. It was a fight for survival. "We can't keep running," Hayes said, her voice hard with resolve. "We need to make a stand. If the Concordance is as old and far-reaching as the Ares say, then they've had centuries to prepare. We don't have that long to figure out what we're up against. We still don't fully understand the power we have," Vega pointed out, his expression thoughtful. "The Ares might have the answers, but they're playing their own game." "They're not the only ones playing," Hayes muttered. "We're going to take this fight to them. But first, we need to unlock everything we have." "Unlock it?" Solus raised an eyebrow. "You're talking about the enhancements, aren't you? The powers the soldiers are starting to experience." "Yes," Hayes said, her eyes narrowing. "We've seen what these powers can do on a small scale. The enhanced soldiers are getting stronger, faster. Their reflexes are sharper. But we've barely scratched the surface of what humanity is capable of. The Ares can help us harness that power, if we can trust them." Vega gave a skeptical glance. "Trust isn't something we can afford right now. The Concordance is already here, and the Ares haven't exactly been forthcoming with everything they know." "They're our best shot," Hayes replied firmly. "If we want to survive this war, we need more than just weapons. We need to unlock our true potential. We need to become something more." The crew fell silent as the implications of Hayes' words settled in. Humanity wasn't just fighting a war. They were fighting to evolve, to ascend to a higher state of existence. The enhancements were only the beginning, a doorway to something far greater. "All right," Solus said after a long pause, "I'll prepare the crew for the next phase of training. If we're going to tap into this power, we need to do it carefully." "Do whatever it takes," Hayes ordered. "We don't have the luxury of time." With the decision made, the Phoenix set a course back to the Ares homeworld. The planet's crystalline structures gleamed like distant stars as they approached, an eerie reminder of the ancient race that had offered their aid. The Ares had promised to teach humanity how to unlock their true potential, but the more Hayes thought about it, the more she wondered, what had they seen in humanity that made them so willing to help? And what price would they demand for it? As the Phoenix entered the atmosphere once more, the ship's crew was preparing for what came next. They were not just going to fight the Concordance, they were going to change the very fabric of who they were. The enhanced soldiers would need to tap into their genetic modifications, unlocking dormant powers within themselves. The future of humanity depended on it. In the heart of the Phoenix, the crew gathered in the ship's training bay, the walls vibrating with the power of the enhancements. Soldiers stood in formation, their eyes focused on the intense training exercises ahead. They were no longer just human. They were something more, something unknown. The air around them crackled with energy as their abilities surged. "You will push beyond your limits," said the voice of the Ares leader, transmitted through the ship's communication system. "Your evolution is already in motion. What you need now is guidance. Focus your mind. Focus your will. Harness your power, or you will be consumed by it." The words rang in Hayes' ears as she watched her soldiers engage in the training, their movements fluid and precise. It wasn't just about physical strength anymore. It was about tapping into something primal, something ancient. The soldiers were beginning to experience the true potential of their enhancements, their bodies humming with energy as they unlocked new abilities. But even as the soldiers trained, Hayes couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. Something far older and far more dangerous than they could comprehend. The Concordance was out there, and they were just beginning to scratch the surface of the war that awaited them. And as the Phoenix's crew delved deeper into their newfound powers, they knew that the true battle had only just begun. The sky was dark, but the stars were beginning to shift. Humanity was on the cusp of something far greater than they had ever dreamed. And in that moment, the Phoenix became more than a ship. It became the vessel of humanity's destiny. The question now was whether they could seize it before the galaxy tore them apart. The Phoenix's engines roared as it broke through the atmosphere of the Eris homeworld, its sleek frame gliding gracefully toward a remote training facility deep within the crystalline forests. The crew had spent weeks honing their new abilities, pushing themselves to the edge of their potential, but now, with the Eris guidance, they were ready to face the next phase. Yet, as the shimmering walls of the facility came into view, Hayes felt a deep, gnawing tension in the pit of her stomach. Something felt off. It wasn't just the unease of venturing into the unknown. It was the feeling of being watched, of something larger than themselves closing in. "We're here." Vega's voice broke through her thoughts as the ship settled into its docking position, ready to continue training. Hayes hesitated for a moment before responding. "We're not just training anymore. We're preparing for war. Make sure the crew's ready. We don't know what the Concordance has planned next." The hangar bay doors opened with a hiss, revealing the eerie quiet of the Eris facility. The walls pulsed with a soft, otherworldly light, casting long shadows that seemed to move in rhythm with the crew's steps. The soldiers were lined up in formation, their faces grim, their bodies infused with the new power they had unlocked over the past few weeks. But even with their enhanced abilities, they were still human, still vulnerable. Captain Hayes stood before them, her voice carrying through the silence. "You've all pushed yourselves beyond what was once thought possible. The enhancements are part of you now, integrated into your biology, your very essence. You've felt the power course through you, but you know that raw strength alone will not be enough to face what's coming. This war is about more than just weapons. It's about our will to survive, our unity as a species." A murmur rippled through the soldiers as they absorbed her words. They were no longer just soldiers. They were humanity's last line of defense. But what if the very power they now wielded could also be their downfall? The Eris leader materialized before them, its shimmering form as enigmatic and inscrutable as ever. "You have awakened the latent abilities of your kind." It intoned, its voice low and resonant. "But remember, power is not a gift. It is a responsibility. The Concordance does not simply want to conquer you. They want to erase what you represent. You are the spark of something they fear, something they cannot control. That is why they will not stop until you are destroyed." Hayes nodded, the gravity of the situation settling heavily upon her shoulders. "We're not running. We're not hiding. We're going to face them head-on." The Eris leader inclined its head, the faintest trace of approval in its eyes. "Very well. But know this, there are others like the Concordance, and they will come. Not just the Trian, not just the Concordance. There are darker forces in the galaxy, ancient and unknowable. Forces that could undo all you've worked for in an instant." "What do you mean?" Vega asked, his voice laced with suspicion. "What else are we dealing with?" The Eris paused, its eyes glowing with an unsettling intensity. "There is a force older than any empire, any race in this galaxy. It is the reason the Concordance exists, to prevent this force from rising again. It is called the Sorrow, a beam of darkness and destruction. It was once locked away by your ancestors, the progenitors of your species. But now, it stirs." The word sorrow echoed in Hayes' mind like a death knell. The idea of a force so powerful, so malevolent, that it had to be imprisoned was beyond comprehension. But the Eris were not known for lies. "The sorrow is coming," the Eris continued, "and it will stop at nothing to see the galaxy fall into chaos. The Concordance, the Trian, they are but pawns in its game. The true battle lies ahead, and you will need more than just your enhancements to face it." Hayes turned to her crew, her heart heavy with the knowledge that the war they were preparing for was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a battle to prevent the galaxy from plunging into oblivion. The stakes were higher than ever, and the odds seemed insurmountable. "We fight not just for Earth, or for the Phoenix," Hayes said, her voice resolute. "We fight for every living being in this galaxy. The sorrow is coming, and we will not let it consume us." The soldiers stood at attention, their faces hard with determination. They had been trained for war, but they had never imagined it would be like this. With the awakening of their true potential, they had been thrust into a conflict that reached far beyond their understanding. The galaxy was on the brink of chaos, and humanity was standing at the precipice. "Prepare yourselves," Hayes continued. "This is the beginning of the end, but we will not fall. We will rise." As she spoke, the ground beneath their feet trembled, a faint rumble that grew louder with each passing second. The Ares turned to face the horizon, their eyes narrowing. "It begins," the leader murmured. The Phoenix crew's hearts raced as they turned toward the sky. The stars above began to shift, their light dimming, as if the very cosmos itself was holding its breath. The war was about to escalate, and the darkness that had been waiting in the shadows was finally beginning to show its face. Hayes knew that no matter the outcome, this would be humanity's defining moment. But whether they could survive what was coming, or whether they would be consumed by it, remained to be seen. The sorrow had awoken, and nothing would ever be the same again. The air inside the Phoenix was thick with anticipation as the crew prepared for what was to come. The enormity of the situation hung over them like an oppressive weight. The sorrow, a dark and ancient force, had begun its descent upon the galaxy, and the Concordance, once humanity's greatest threat, was merely a precursor to the real battle that lay ahead. Captain Nadia Hayes paced the command deck, her mind racing with strategy and the endless questions that gnawed at her. How could they defeat an enemy like the sorrow, a being that transcended time and space? How could humanity, with all its newfound powers, stand a chance against such an ancient evil? "We're almost ready," Vega said, his voice taut with the same tension that filled the ship. "But I've been running the numbers. Captain, we can't fight this force alone. We'll need more than just the Phoenix and our enhancements. We'll need allies, real ones. The Concordance will help us, but only because they fear the sorrow as much as we do." Hayes stopped, turning to face him. "We'll take what help we can get, but don't trust them, Vega. The Concordance has a long history of manipulation. We can't risk depending on them for more than just an alliance in name." Solis, who had been silently observing, spoke up. "The Eris have warned us about their limited knowledge of the sorrow. We have to rely on our own strength. We have to push beyond what we've learned, become something even the sorrow doesn't anticipate." The crew fell silent, each one feeling the weight of Hayes' words. They had only begun to scratch the surface of the power within them, but now it seemed that power might be their only hope. As the Phoenix made its way toward the coordinates that would bring them into the heart of the conflict, Hayes couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. The sorrow's presence loomed like a shadow across the stars, and every inch they traveled toward the heart of that darkness felt like they were stepping closer to their own destruction. The ship's communications console pinged, and Solis's voice broke through the tension. "Captain, we've got a message from the Concordance." Hayes turned sharply. "Put it through." The hologram of the Concordance envoy flickered to life, a being cloaked in an imposing black armor, its face hidden behind a metallic mask. The voice that followed was cold and devoid of emotion. "We have come to a decision, Captain Hayes," the envoy said, its voice like ice. "The sorrow threatens all. We are willing to provide our full support, but you will answer one thing for us. Will you give us control over the Phoenix's weaponry once the battle is won? Our people require leverage." Hayes' eyes narrowed, but she kept her composure. "And if I refuse?" The envoy's gaze, if it could even be called that, seemed to pierce through the holographic projection. "Then you will fight alone. You have no allies other than us. Consider your options carefully." "Your leverage is meaningless," Hayes said, her voice icy with resolve. "We will fight this war on our terms." The hologram flickered and vanished, leaving a lingering silence in its wake. "Don't trust them," Vega muttered, glaring at the empty space where the envoy had been. Hayes nodded. "We'll deal with them after we've won. Right now, we focus on surviving what's to come." As the Phoenix approached the heart of the galaxy, the crew could feel it. The presence of the sorrow. It was like a weight pressing down on them, a darkness that seemed to stretch across time and space. The stars ahead were beginning to distort, warping and flickering like dying embers. "We're entering the event horizon," Solus said, her voice shaky. "The sorrow is closer than we thought." "Brace yourselves," Hayes ordered. "This is it. Whatever happens, we stay united. We fight, and we don't stop until the galaxy breathes again." The ship plunged into the heart of the darkness, and the crew could see it now. The sorrow, an immense, shapeless entity that consumed all light in its wake. It was as though the very essence of the galaxy had been twisted and corrupted by its presence. A colossal, swirling mass of void energy. The sorrow hung in the center of the galaxy, its tendrils stretching outward to consume all life. And yet, within that void, there was something human, something unyielding. The Phoenix's weapon systems flared to life, but the energy from the sorrow was overwhelming. The ship's shields flickered and crackled, barely holding against the onslaught. Hayes' heart pounded in her chest as she felt the weight of the moment crash down upon them. "This is what we were made for," she said quietly, her voice a soft whisper. "This is where humanity proves its worth." The enhanced soldiers, now fully attuned to their new powers, stepped forward, their bodies humming with energy. They felt the raw force of the sorrow's presence, the darkness clawing at their minds, but they did not falter. They fought not with weapons alone, but with the will to survive, with the indomitable spirit of humanity. As the first wave of the sorrow's tendrils reached out to consume them, the Phoenix struck. The weapons on the ship unleashed a torrent of energy, cutting through the dark void with surgical precision. The enhanced soldiers activated their abilities, reaching into the very core of their being to unleash powers that defied the laws of physics. The battle raged on, fierce, unrelenting, a cosmic struggle between the darkness of the sorrow and the unyielding light of humanity. The Phoenix's crew fought with everything they had, their hearts and minds focused on one singular goal: survival. The stars began to flicker back into existence, and for the first time in what felt like eternity, the darkness began to recede. The sorrow faltered. "We're not done yet," Hayes said, her voice fierce. "This is just the beginning." The Phoenix had ignited a spark, a light in the darkness that would burn brighter than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity had ascended, and no matter what came next, they would never be extinguished. The final stand had begun, and the galaxy would never forget the name of the Phoenix.